I never thought life would turn out this way, stagnant, suffocating, and fucking meaningless. Every morning, I'd wake up to the same goddamn alarm, get dressed like a goddamn robot, and drag myself to work, where I'd stare at a screen for hours, pretending to give a shit. I used to have dreams, big ones. But somewhere along the line, I lost them, or maybe I just lost myself. That night, the air outside was thick with the scent of rain, the kind that clung to your skin and made the world feel heavier. The neon glow from the coffee shop window cast a sickly yellow light onto the wet pavement as I stepped inside, shaking off my soaked jacket. The place was half empty, except for the usual loners hunched over their laptops, trying to convince themselves they were doing something important. I wasn't here because I liked coffee. Hell, I didn't even know why I was here. Maybe it was force of habit, or maybe I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't my shitty apartment, staring at the same four walls that had become my personal prison. I ordered the usual black coffee, no sugar, because life was bitter enough. And then I saw her. She was laughing, actually laughing, like the world wasn't an absolute dumpster fire. Like she didn't have bills to pay or regrets that kept her up at night. Her voice carried across the cafe, light and full of something I couldn't quite place. Energy, confidence, whatever the fuck it was, I didn't have it. I must have been staring too long because, just as I was about to look away, she turned and locked eyes with me. And then she smirked, goddamn smirked. "You look like someone who's either plotting murder or contemplating their entire existence," she said. Sliding into the seat across from me without an invitation, I blinked. "Excuse me." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table like we were old friends. "You just have that look, you know, like you're one bad day away from snapping." I let out a dry laugh. "You have no idea." She studied me, her gaze sharp and knowing. "Let me guess. You hate your job, your life feels like a loop, and you're wondering if this is all there is." Am I close? I should have been annoyed. Instead, I felt exposed, like she had just cracked open my skull and read my darkest thoughts. "Something like that," I muttered, taking a sip of my coffee. She grinned and pushed a plate of half-eaten cheesecake toward me. "Eat this." I frowned. "What?" "Just do it. Trust me." I hesitated, then took a bite. It was good, not that I gave a shit about cheesecake, but something about her confidence, the way she seemed so damn sure of everything, made me curious. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. She leaned back, arms crossed. "Daisy. And you, Jake." "Well, Jake, let me tell you something. Life doesn't just get better, you have to make it better. You ever tried doing something that scares the shit out of you?" I scoffed. "Like what?" "Quitting my job and backpacking across Europe. Jumping out of a plane. Joining a fucking circus." Daisy shrugged. "Why not? What's stopping you?" I opened my mouth to answer but stopped, because the truth was I didn't know. At that moment, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An email from my boss. My stomach twisted as I tapped it open. "Jake, due to company restructuring, we regret to inform you that your position has been terminated, effective immediately." I stared at the words, my brain refusing to process them. Fired. Just like that. No warning, no severance, no backup plan. Daisy noticed the change in my expression. "Bad news." I swallowed hard. "I just lost my job." She didn't even blink. "Good." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, fucking fantastic. Rent's due in 2 weeks, and I have exactly $200 in my bank account. But yeah, great fucking news." She tapped her fingers on the table. "Think about it. You hate that job, right?" "That's not the goddamn point, Daisy. I needed that job, did you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Or was it just a safety net, something to keep you stuck because at least it was familiar?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her she didn't understand. That the truth settled in my gut like a lead weight. She was right. Daisy leaned in, eyes burning with something fierce. "You have nothing left to lose now. So what the hell are you gonna do about it?" I had no answer. But for the first time in years, the fear of staying the same outweighed the fear of change. I stared at the rain streaking down the cafe window, my mind still reeling from the email. The words "effective" immediately echoed in my head like a fucking death sentence. Just like that, I was jobless. No warning, no severance, just one cold, impersonal email telling me that my existence at the company had been erased. Daisy, still sitting across from me, took a slow sip of her coffee. watching me like a cat sizing up a wounded bird. The worst part, she didn't look surprised. She looked like she had been waiting for this moment. "You look like you're about to throw up," she said, tilting her head. I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, no shit. I just lost my fucking job." She didn't flinch, and I blinked. "And what do you mean, and?" "That job was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart." She snorted. "Was it, though? Or was it just a crutch? Something safe, predictable, a reason to wake up every morning even though you fucking hated it?" I opened my mouth to argue, but I didn't have an answer, because she wasn't wrong. I hated that job, every single soul-sucking, mind-numbing second of it. But without it, what the hell was I supposed to do? Sit at home and watch my savings evaporate? Call my parents and tell them their son who once had potential was now officially a loser? Daisy leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes burning with something reckless. "You're free now, Jake. No ties, no obligations. So tell me, what are you gonna do with that?" I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah. Real fucking free. Free to spiral into debt. Free to get evicted. Free to start over." I stared at her. She shrugged, popping a forkful of cheesecake into her mouth like we weren't discussing the complete collapse of my life. "You ever thought about just leaving?" I scoffed. "Leaving? Like, what?" "Running off to some tropical island to drink cocktails and pretend my problems don't exist." She grinned. "Not a bad idea." I rubbed my hands over my face, my heartbeat still hammering from the shock of losing my job. "I don't have the money for that shit. Sell your car, sell your furniture. Hell, sell your soul if you haven't already," she smirked. "Point is, you don't actually need much to start over. You just need to want it bad enough." "Yeah. And what's your story, huh? Why the hell do you care so much about what I do?" For the first time, her smirk faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. She pushed her plate aside, leaning back. "Because I've been where you are, Jake. Stuck, trapped, waiting for something to change, only to realize that nothing ever does unless you burn the whole damn thing down and start fresh." Something about the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. There was a weight behind her words, like she was speaking from experience, like she had burned her life down before. I exhaled sharply. "And what did you do?" Daisy smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I walked away from everything. From my job, my apartment, my old life. Packed a bag and left. Scariest fucking thing I ever did." I narrowed my eyes. "And what? It just magically worked out?" She snorted. "Hell no. It was a goddamn train wreck at first. I slept in airports, ran out of money more times than I could count, and nearly had a breakdown in a dingy hostel in Bangkok. But you know what? I was alive. And eventually, I figured it out." Her words settled over me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I wasn't living, I was just existing. And now I had a choice. I could keep spiraling. Spend the next few weeks drinking myself into oblivion, avoiding phone calls, waiting for some miracle that would never come. Or I could do something crazy, something that would terrify the absolute shit out of me. I glanced at Daisy, who was watching me expectantly, her foot tapping against the floor. I hesitated. Then, before I could stop myself, I asked a question that would change everything. "What would you do if you were me?" Her grin returned, slow and dangerous. "Oh, that's easy. I'd buy a one-way ticket to somewhere completely unfamiliar and figure it out as I go." I stared at her. "Just like that. Just like that." She leaned in. "The question is, do you have the balls to do it?" Something hot and reckless surged through me, drowning out the fear. Maybe I did. Maybe, for the first time in my life, I was ready to burn it all down. The airport was a fucking nightmare. I stood in line, gripping my one-way ticket like it was a ticking bomb. My heart pounded, my mouth was dry, and for the millionth time, I asked myself what the fuck I was doing. This was insane. No plan, no job, barely any savings, just Daisy's reckless ass idea taking root in my brain like a virus. And yet, here I was. I glanced at her. She stood beside me, completely unfazed, scrolling through her phone like we weren't about to throw our lives into chaos. "Still breathing?" she asked without looking up. I swallowed hard. "Barely," she grinned. "Good. Means you're still alive." "Alive, right? That's what this was supposed to be about. When my turn finally came, I handed over my passport, trying to look like a normal, functioning human and not like someone who had just torched his entire life in under 24 hours. The ticket agent barely looked at me. She checked my documents. Then, like some cosmic joke, her expression shifted. "Sir, there's an issue with your ticket." My stomach fucking dropped. "What kind of issue?" She frowned at the screen. "It appears to be flagged for additional verification." "One moment, please." I shot Daisy a look. She just raised an eyebrow, completely unconcerned. The agent picked up the phone, murmuring something to whoever was on the other end. My brain went into panic mode. Had my bank account been frozen? Did my old job somehow screw me over even more? Was this a sign that I was making the worst mistake of my life? I took a shaky breath and turned to Daisy. "If they don't let me board, that's it. I'm done. I'll take it as a sign and go home." She smirked. "No, you won't." "The hell I won't." Her eyes gleamed. "Because there is no home to go back to. Jake, you made sure of that. You sold your car. You broke your lease. You burned the bridge. You think you can just walk back and pretend none of this happened?" Her words were like a punch to the gut. She was right. I had nothing left to return to. Before I could spiral any further, the agent finally hung up the phone and turned back to me. "Everything's fine, sir. There was just a system flag. You're good to go." I exhaled sharply. "Jesus Christ." "Told you," Daisy muttered as I grabbed my ticket. I should have felt relieved. But deep down, there was still that known voice whispering that this was a terrible fucking idea. We boarded the plane just as a storm started rolling in. The turbulence hit fast and hard, the kind that makes people start gripping their armrests and whispering prayers. The cabin lights flickered, and the plane lurched. I clenched my fists. This is a sign. This is the universe telling me to turn the fuck around. Daisy just laughed. Or maybe it's just bad weather. Dumbass, I glared at her. "We're about to die and you're making jokes. If the plane goes down, at least you won't have to worry about your life choices anymore." I groaned. Why the hell did I agree to this? She tilted her head. "Because deep down, you know this is the only way out." I hated how much sense she made sometimes. The plane rattled violently again, the overhead bin shaking. Somewhere behind us, a woman gasped, and then, as if the storm had grown bored of toying with us, the turbulence suddenly stopped, the plane steadied. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers, assuring everyone that we'd hit a rough patch, but that we were back on track. Daisy turned to me with a smug look. "See? Told you." I exhaled. "I fucking hate you." She grinned. "No, you don't." We landed in a city that smelled like rain and gasoline, the streets glistening under neon lights. As we stepped out of the airport, reality slammed into me all over again. I had no home, no job, no idea what the hell I was doing. Daisy stretched her arms over her head, completely unfazed. "God, I love this feeling." "What feeling?" She spun to face me, her eyes electric. "The moment before everything happens. The chaos, the unknown, the possibility." I shoved my hands in my pockets, feeling like a fucking idiot. "Great. So what's the plan?" She grinned. "We make it up as we go." I groaned. "Jesus Christ. You really are insane." Daisy just winked. "Welcome to the real world, Jake." The city swallowed us whole the second we stepped onto the street. Neon lights flickered against rain-slick pavement, casting twisted reflections of people who looked like they belonged in like us. Car horns blared, distant sirens wailed, and the air was thick with the scent of fried street food, gasoline, and something vaguely rotten. I pulled my backpack tighter against my shoulders. My whole fucking life was in there. Clothes, a crumpled wad of cash, a half-dead phone, and a rapidly dwindling sense of sanity. Daisy, of course, looked completely at home. She inhaled deeply, closing her eyes for a second like she was breathing in freedom itself. Then she grinned, turning to me. "This is the best part." I stared at her. "The best part of what?" "Of starting over." She spread her arms, spinning in place. "New city, new people, no expectations. We can be whoever the fuck we want to be." I rubbed a hand over my face. "Yeah. Well, right now I want to be someone with a place to sleep." She rolled her eyes. "Relax, drama queen. I've got a plan. That was the first red flag. Her plan turned out to be a shady-looking hostel wedged between a tattoo parlor and a convenience store that only sold instant noodles and cigarettes. The lobby smelled like mildew, the check-in guy looked like he hadn't slept in a decade, and the flickering hallway lights made the whole place feel like the setting of a low-budget horror movie. I dropped my bag onto the creaky bunk bed, glaring at Daisy. This is the plan? Sleeping in a fucking murder hostel, she plopped down onto her mattress with a grin. You're still breathing, aren't you? I groaned. For now. By midnight, I was fucking starving. Daisy had crashed hours ago, but I couldn't sleep. My stomach growled, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since the airplane peanuts. I grabbed my wallet, barely $50 left shoved on my jacket, and slipped out into the city. The streets felt different at night, darker, meaner. Every alleyway looked like a bad decision waiting to happen, but hunger pushed me forward. I found a street vendor still open, a wiry old man grilling skewers over an open flame. The smell made my stomach twist in agony. I fumbled for my wallet, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and was just about to take my first glorious bite when I felt a shift in the air. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I turned my head just in time to see the guy behind me move. Too fast, too close, and then pain. White hot, electric pain ripped through my ribs as the guy yanked my wallet straight out of my hands and took off into the dark. I stumbled back, fucking winded, gripping my side. Son of a, I whirled around, eyes darting wildly. Gone. The bastard was gone. My chest heaved. Fucking perfect. No money. No ID. No goddamn food. I clenched my fists, stomach twisting not just from hunger, but from something worse, fear. Because for the first time since landing in this city, it hit me. I wasn't just broke, I was completely, utterly fucked. I limped back to the hostel, empty-handed, ribs aching like hell. Daisy was still asleep, curled under a thin blanket. I stared at her, then at my empty hands, then at the flickering ceiling light. And then, for the first time since this whole mess started, I thought about quitting, going back if there was even anything left to go back to. But something deep in my gut growled louder than my hunger. No. Fuck that. If I was gonna go down, I'd go down swinging. And this city hadn't beaten me yet, but it sure as hell was trying. By the next morning, I was running on fumes. Sleep had been impossible, my stomach was a fucking pit of acid, and my body ached in places I didn't know could ache. Daisy, on the other hand, looked fresh as a goddamn daisy. She stretched, yawning, morning, sunshine. I glared. I got mugged last night. She paused. Well, that sucks. That's all you have to say. She shrugged. Did you die? I resisted the urge to throw something at her. No. But my wallet sure as hell did. Her smirk faded at that. She studied me for a second, then sighed. All right, dumbass, we need a new plan. New plan turned out to be hustling. Daisy had a knack for finding opportunities in the unlikeliest places. By noon, she had conned her way into a gig at some bar, promising to work for tips, which, knowing her, probably meant she planned on flirting her way into free cash. Me? I wasn't so lucky. After hours of wandering, the only place that didn't turn me away was a grimy little kitchen tucked behind a noodle shop. The owner barely spoke English, but he took one look at me, grunted, and tossed me an apron. Just like that, I was officially the most overqualified dishwasher on the planet. It was brutal, hot, greasy, soul-crushing. But at least it meant I wouldn't starve. By the time I dragged myself back to the hostel, I was dead on my feet. Daisy was waiting, counting a pile of crumpled bills with a self-satisfied grin. She looked up. Well, I dropped onto the bed, groaning. I smell like dish soap and disappointment. She laughed. Welcome to the real world, baby. That night, as I lay there, exhaustion pressing heavy on my bones, I realized something. I had lost everything. My money, my comfort, my goddamn pride. But for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Surviving in a foreign city with no money felt like being thrown into the deep end of the ocean with a fucking brick tied to your ankles. At first, all you could do was thrash around, gasping for air, praying you wouldn't drown. But then somewhere in the chaos you learn how to swim. That's exactly what happened to me. At first, the dishwashing job was hell. The kitchen was a sweatbox. The old man who ran the place barely spoke, and the pay was laughable. I'd finish my shift drenched in grease, hands raw from soap, feeling like a goddamn ghost drifting through the city. But Daisy never let me wallow in self-pity for too long. One night, after another shift that left me feeling like roadkill, she dragged me out to a rooftop bar. The place was buzzing with music and neon lights, a haven for lost souls and dreamers like us. She clinked her beer against mine. To surviving. I smirked, shaking my head. To barely surviving. Same shit. She leaned back, stretching her arms behind her head. You know, you gotta stop acting like this city is trying to kill you. Maybe it's trying to make you stronger. I snorted, by robbing me blind and giving me third-degree burns from dishwater. She grinned. Exactly. Nothing worth having comes easy. Babe. Maybe she had a point. Slowly, I started to adapt. I picked up more shifts at the noodle shop, learning the rhythm of the kitchen. The old man who I started calling boss turned out to be a pretty decent guy, in his own grumpy way. He'd grunt approvingly when I got faster at scrubbing dishes or when I managed to carry more plates without dropping them. One time, he even tossed me a free meal at the end of my shift. It was the best damn bowl of noodles I ever had. And outside of work, Daisy was like a human magnet for adventure. She taught me how to hustle, not in a shady way mostly not, but in a fake it till you make it kind of way. She had a way of talking to people that made them want to say yes. Confidence is everything. Jake, you walk into a place looking like you belong. People will believe you. At first, I thought she was full of shit. But then I started testing it out. One afternoon, I walked into a fancy cafe like I had a goddamn business meeting. I ordered a coffee, acted like I belonged, and nobody questioned a thing. It was a stupid little victory, but it felt like proof that maybe, just maybe, I could make something of myself here. The big change came one evening when I was sitting in the hostel common area, scrolling through job ads. You speak English, right? I looked up. Some guy, a fellow backpacker, was watching me from across the room. I raised an eyebrow. No. I just fake it really well, he chuckled. No. I mean, like, actually teach it. There's a language center downtown looking for native speakers. They pay decent. My brain nearly short-circuited. Teaching English, that was a thing. I hadn't considered it before, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I was broke. I spoke fluent English. And if random white dudes on YouTube could make a career out of this, why the hell couldn't I? I showed up to the interview the next day, dressed in the cleanest shirt I owned, running on equal parts nerves and caffeine. The woman in charge, Mr. Jake, was all business. Do you have teaching experience? I forced a confident smile. Of course. Lie. Unless explaining movies to my drunk friends counted as teaching. She studied me for a moment, then she slid a workbook across the table. Show me. And just like that, I was in. Teaching English turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. At first, I had no fucking idea what I was doing. I'd stumble through lessons, mispronounce student names, and get hit with awkward silences when I asked a question nobody wanted to answer. But little by little, I figured it out. I learned how to make people laugh, how to keep the class engaged. I cracked jokes, acted out ridiculous scenarios, and made a fool of myself so my students wouldn't be afraid to do the same. And you know what? It worked. My students loved me. They actually learned shit. And for the first time in forever, I was making real money. Not barely surviving dishwashing money. Actual pay rent and buy real food money. The first time I held a paycheck in my hands, I nearly cried. Not because it was a fortune, but because it was proof. Proof that I could stand on my own 2 feet. Proof that I wasn't a fucking failure. Months passed, life got easier. I moved out of the murder hostel and into a tiny studio apartment just big enough for a bed, a desk, and the smallest fridge known to mankind. But it was mine. Daisy and I still met up all the time. She was killing it bartending, hustling her way into better gigs, always chasing the next adventure. One night, over drinks, she nudged me. So, you staying? I took a sip of my beer, thinking. 6 months ago, if you'd told me I'd be teaching English in a foreign city, building a life from nothing, I would have laughed in your face. But now, I exhaled, smiling. Yeah, I think I am, she grinned. Told you. The city wasn't trying to kill you, it was making you stronger. And goddamn it, she was right. Here's the thing. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the start of something new. If you're broke, lost, and scared out of your goddamn mind, good, that means you're alive. That means you have nothing to lose, so you might as well fucking go for it, because life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It throws you into the deep and dares you to learn how to swim. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you do. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey. If you're ever scared to start over, just remember sometimes the best stories come from the worst beginnings.